Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the sage god of Midgard, a guardian of the realms. Naruto x Angela, Marvel Comics. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Hum of Forgotten Power. The midday sun beat down on the unassuming sprawl of Kuo Town, baking the asphalt and shimmering off the windshields of parked cars. To anyone observing the scene, a young man with spiky blonde hair awkwardly carrying an armful of textbooks, nearly dropping a well-worn copy of Tactical Applications of Advanced Chakra Theory, as he navigated the crowded sidewalk. Here would be nothing to suggest he was anything other than an exceptionally clumsy student. Naruto Uzumaki, 18 years of age and perpetually running late, was a master of blending into the mundane. A talent honed not through conscious effort, but through a lifetime of being overlooked. Yet, lately, the mundane had begun to fray at the edges. It started subtly, a fleeting sensation of power, thrumming beneath his skin like a dormant engine, a whisper of ancient words he couldn't understand echoing in the quiet moments before sleep. The dreams were the most persistent, vivid tapestries woven with celestial landscapes. Towering figures wreathed in starlight, and the crushing weight of responsibilities he couldn't name. He'd wake with a lingering sense of loss, a profound ache for something he'd never known. Today, the feeling was stronger than usual, a low hum that vibrated in his bones as he dodged a gaggle of giggling girls from the local academy. It was accompanied by a flash of an image so real it made him stumble, a vast, emerald plain stretching beneath a sky choked with swirling nebulae, and in the distance, the silhouette of a colossal serpent coiled around a tree that pierced the heavens. The image vanished as quickly as it came, leaving him disoriented and blinking in the bright sunlight. "Whoa, clumsy as ever, Naruto." A familiar voice chuckled. Matsuda, one of H's less academically inclined classmates, sauntered past, a smirk plastered across his face. Naruto offered a sheepish grin, rubbing the back of his head. "Yeah, you know me. Gravity and I have a complicated relationship." He tried to sound casual, dismissing the strange vision as a trick of the light or stress from his upcoming exams. But the feeling persisted, a subtle pressure behind his eyes. Later that afternoon, during a particularly dull history lecture on the feudal wars of Japan, the feeling intensified. The classroom seemed to fade, replaced by the sensation of standing on a windswept precipice. The roar of a cosmic ocean crashing against unseen shores. He heard a voice, ancient and resonant, a language he somehow understood despite never having heard it before. The threads weaken, the slumbering giant stirs. He blinked, his heart pounding, to find the history teacher droning on about the Battle of Sekigahara, completely oblivious to the cosmic drama unfolding within Naruto's mind. He gripped his pen tightly, knuckles white, trying to ground himself in the present. Something was happening to him, something far beyond the realm of chakra theory or historical facts. That evening, the subtle anomalies escalated. As he walked home, a stray dog, a mangy terrier he'd often seen scavenging near the ramen shop, suddenly stopped in its tracks, its eyes glowing with an unatu raw golden light as it growled at an unseen presence behind Naruto. The air around him shimmered for a fleeting moment, and then the dog whined and darted away, seemingly terrified by nothing. Naruto's hand instinctively went to the empty pouch at his hip where he sometimes imagined carrying his long-lost kunai. A warrior's instinct, buried deep within him, was beginning to surface. He felt a surge of energy, a raw, untamed power that had no connection to the carefully controlled chakra he'd learned to manipulate. This was something primal, something vast. He reached his small, cluttered apartment. The familiar scent of instant ramen and unwashed laundry usually a comfort. Tonight, it felt suffocating, the mundane reality pressing in on the burgeoning strangeness within him. He sat on his worn futon, closing his eyes and focusing on the residual hum of power. He reached out with his senses, trying to understand its source. The visions returned, clearer this time. He saw himself, not as the slightly awkward student, but as a towering figure radiating golden light, his eyes blazing with cosmic energy. He wielded a staff that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, and he stood awry. Shadowy creatures that writhed and clawed at the fabric of reality. The title echoed in his mind, unbidden, yet undeniably his. sage god of Midgard. He gasped, his eyes snapping open. Sage god, Midgard. It sounded like something out of a fantasy novel, not his ordinary, if somewhat unlucky, life. Yet, the feeling was undeniable, a resonant truth that vibrated within his very being. Just as he was trying to process this impossible revelation, a knock echoed at his door. It wasn't the usual impatient rap of his classmate Issei trying to drag him to some dubious activity. This was a firm, authoritative knock. Hesitantly, Naruto opened the door. Standing in the dimly lit hallway was a woman unlike anyone he had ever seen. She was tall and powerfully built, clad in gleaming silver and gold armor that seemed to absorb the meager light. Her wings, folded neatly behind her back, were the color of spun moonlight, and her gaze was piercing, intelligent, and held a hint of recognition. Her voice, when she spoke, was formal and carried a melodic quality. Naruto Uzumaki, she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. I am Angela of Heaven. We need to talk. The hum within Naruto intensified, resonating with an energy emanating from the armored woman before him. The mundane world of Kuo Town seemed to tilt on its axis, the forgotten power within him stirring from its long slumber. The age of the sage god of Midgard, it seemed, was about to begin anew. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Weight of Wings. The cramped confines of Naruto's apartment felt inadequate for the presence of Angela. Her very stillness radiated a contained power, a warrior's poise that seemed to shrink the already small living space. The moonlight filtering through the grimy window glinted off the intricate etchings on her armor, each line whispering of battles fought and victories won in realms beyond human comprehension. Naruto, still reeling from the internal earthquake of his burgeoning memories and the sudden appearance of this celestial being, could only stare. May I come in? Angela's voice, though firm, held a note of polite formality that contrasted with her imposing figure. Naruto, snapping out of his stupor, stammered, yeah, sure, sorry, it's not much. He gestured vaguely at the cluttered room, acutely aware of the discarded ramen containers and stacks of manga. Angela stepped inside with a grace that belied her armored form, her luminous wings momentarily brushing against the doorframe before folding back into a near-invisible configuration. She surveyed the apartment with a neutral expression, her gaze lingering for a moment on the worn photograph on his desk, a faded image of a smiling Minato and Kushina. You carry the aura, Angela stated, her voice direct, cutting through the awkward silence. The echoes of the sage god are strong within you, though fragmented. Naruto finally found his voice, a mixture of confusion and a dawning sense of something profound. Sage god, look, I've been having these weird dreams, these visions. And I felt this power, but I don't understand any of this. Who was the sage god? And what's heaven? Angela turned her piercing gaze fully upon him. The sage god was the guardian of Midgard, a protector of this realm and a keystone in the delicate balance between the 9 worlds. Heaven is one of those realms, a celestial domain of light and order, home to warriors sworn to the cause of justice. She paused, her expression becoming grave. For millennia, the sage god watched over Midgard, his power a silent shield against threats both mortal and cosmic. Then, he vanished. Legends faded, and the memory of his existence became little more than myth. And, I'm him? Naruto asked, pointing a shaky finger at himself. The idea was ludicrous, yet the strange hum within him, the lingering images of celestial battles, the undeniable sense of familiarity with Angela's presence, it all pointed towards an impossible truth. You bear his essence, his spark, Angela clarified, reincarnated, it seems, in a mortal form, unaware of your past. But the stirring you feel, the visions, they are the awakening of that ancient power. But why now? Naruto questioned, running a hand through his unruly hair. Why am I remembering now? The balance is shifting, Angela explained, her gaze distant, as if seeing events unfolding across vast distances. Threats long dormant are beginning to stir. The absence of the sage god has created a vulnerability, a ripple effect across the realms. Your awakening is timely. Suddenly, a trem ran through the small apartment building. Loose objects rattled on shelves, and a low, guttural growl echoed from somewhere outside. Both Naruto and Angela tensed, their senses immediately on high alert. What was that? Naruto asked, his earlier confusion replaced by a surge of adrenaline. Angela's wings flared slightly, a subtle movement that spoke of readiness. Something stirs. Something discordant. It feels. Jotun. Of Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, Angela clarified, her eyes narrowing. Their presence on Midgard is a violation, an omen. Another, louder growl echoed, closer this time, followed by the terrified yelping of dogs from the street below. Naruto felt a primal fear mixed with a strange sense of recognition. The shadowy creatures from his visions, they had a certain hulking, monstrous quality that now resonated with Angela's description. We need to see what's happening, Angela stated, already moving towards the window. She glanced back at Naruto, her expression serious. The power awakening within you, it will be needed. Naruto hesitated for only a moment. Fear warred with a burgeoning sense of responsibility, an echo of the towering figure from his dreams. He thought of the stray dog glowing with unnatural light, the strange shimmering in the air. He thought of the vast emerald plain and the cosmic serpent. He stood up, a newfound resolve hardening his gaze. Then let's go. Together, they moved to the window and looked out onto the street below. Panic was beginning to spread. People were screaming, scattering as a massive, hulking figure, easily 10 feet tall, with skin the color of storm clouds and glowing red eyes, lumbered down the street, smashing through parked cars as if they were toys. It roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the building. And in its hand, it clutched a terrified young woman. Naruto felt a surge of anger, a protective instinct overriding his fear. This was wrong. This creature didn't belong here. He felt the hum within him intensify, coiling in his gut like a gathering storm. Angela's hand rested on the hilt of a gleaming sword that seemed to materialize from thin air. A frost giant. What is one doing so far from Jotunheim? Quote. Before Naruto could answer, the giant roared again, its gaze sweeping across the buildings, locking onto their window. A guttural challenge rumbled in its chest. Angela's wings unfurled fully, their majestic span filling the small room. We have no time for questions. The balance has been disturbed. We must act. With a powerful thrust of her wings, Angela launched herself out of the window. A silver and gold streak against the twilight sky. Naruto watched her go, a strange mix of awe and trepidation swirling within him. He was just a clumsy student, wasn't he? How could he possibly face something like that? But the image of the terrified woman in the giant's grasp seared itself into his mind. He thought of the dreams, the responsibility he felt but couldn't fully comprehend. He thought of the power stirring within him, a power that felt ancient and vast. Taking a deep breath, Naruto focused on that feeling, that hum of forgotten power. He closed his eyes, and the image of the sage god, wreathed in golden light, wielding his staff, flashed in his mind. He didn't know how, but he knew he had to try. He opened his eyes, a flicker of golden energy dancing within their depths. He might be just Naruto Uzumaki, but something ancient and powerful slept within him, and it was beginning to awaken. He had no wings of moonlight, no gleaming sword, but he had something else. Something he had always possessed, even in his most overlooked moments, an unwavering determination. He leapt out the window, not with the graceful flight of an angel, but with a reckless abandon, channeling the raw energy within him as he plummeted towards the street. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew he couldn't stand by and watch. The sage god of Midgard might be a forgotten legend, but perhaps, just perhaps, a clumsy student from Kuo town could remind the 9 realms why that legend existed in the first place. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Language of Steel and Thunder. The air cracked with the force of Angela's descent. Her sword, Whisperwind, sang a high-pitched note as it sliced through the air, a blur of celestial steel aimed at the frost giant's massive arm. The giant, momentarily surprised by the winged figure's sudden appearance, roared in pain as the blade bit deep into its icy flesh, drawing a dark, viscous ichor. It dropped the terrified woman, who scrambled away, whimpering, towards the relative safety of a shattered storefront. Naruto, meanwhile, landed with a less than graceful thud on the hood of a wrecked car, the impact jarring his teeth. He scrambled to his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins, his senses heightened in a way they never had been before. He could feel the raw, chaotic energy emanating from the frost giant. The focused intensity radiating from Angela as she engaged the behemoth. Stay back, mortal. Angela's voice, though strained with effort as she parried a clumsy but powerful blow from the giant's fist, carried a warning. This is beyond your current capabilities. But Naruto couldn't just stand there. The sight of the injured woman, the destructive rampage of the giant, ignited a fire within him that had nothing to do with forgotten godhood and everything to do with his ingrained need to protect the innocent. He focused on the humming energy within him, trying to channel it, to give it form. It felt wild and untamed, unlike the precise control of chakra he was used to. Instinctively, he drew upon the raw power, visualizing the swirling energy coalescing around his fists. Chi wasn't the familiar blue glow of chakra. This was a golden, incandescent light that crackled with barely contained force. He felt a surge of strength, a fleeting echo of the towering figure from his visions. He launched himself towards the frost giant, moving with a speed and agility that surprised even himself. He aimed a punch at the giant's thick leg, the golden energy erupting from his fist upon impact. The effect was far greater than he anticipated. Instead of a dull thud, there was a resounding crack, like ice shattering under immense pressure, and the giant roared in surprise and pain, stumbling back. Angela, who had been forced to retreat momentarily, glanced at Naruto with a mixture of surprise and concern. "What did you do?" I don't know," Naruto admitted, panting slightly. The effort of channeling the raw power leaving him drained. "It just happened." The frost giant, enraged, turned its glowing red eyes on Naruto, ignoring the more immediate threat of Angela. It swung its massive fist down at him, the force of the blow creating a shockwave that rippled through the air. Naruto reacted instinctively, leaping out of the way just as the ground where he had been standing cracked and splintered. Angela seized the opportunity, her sword flashing again, this time aimed at the giant's other leg. With a precise strike, she severed a tendon, and the behemoth crashed to one knee with a deafening thud. "Now," Angela yelled, her voice urgent. "We must subdue it before it causes more destruction." The frost giant, though crippled, was far from defeated. It swiped its massive arms wildly, forcing Angela to take to the air. Naruto, still unsure of the extent of his newfound abilities, tried to find a way to contribute. He focused again on the golden energy, feeling it build within him. But he lacked the control to shape it effectively. Just then, a figure landed gracefully beside Naruto, clad in gleaming silver armor. It was another woman, her crimson cloak billowing in the wind. A formidable greatsword strapped to her back. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, assessed the situation with a calm, professional gaze. Well, she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement despite the gravity of the situation. "Looks like someone stirred up a bit of trouble." She turned her attention to Naruto, her gaze sharp. "And you, little mortal, you reek of something ancient." Before Naruto could respond, she turned her attention to the kneeling frost giant, drawing her greatsword with a fluid motion. The blade seemed to hum with power. "Stand aside, angel. This one is trespassing on Asgard's protectorate. I'll handle it." Her voice held a confident authority that brooked no argument. Angela descended, landing lightly beside Naruto. "Sif, what are you doing here?" Her tone held a note of surprise, tinged with a hint of underlying tension. The newly arrived woman, Sif, hefted her greatsword, her gaze never leaving the struggling frost giant. Odin sensed a disturbance, a Jotun presence far south of where it belongs. He sent me to investigate. Seems I arrived just in time to prevent further unpleasantness. She gave a curt nod towards Naruto. "And to take a closer look at this." The frost giant, seeing two heavily armed warriors poised to strike, let out a frustrated roar and attempted to stand, its injured leg buckling beneath its weight. Sif moved with lightning speed, her greatsword a silver arc of death. With a single, powerful swing, she decapitated the behemoth. The giant's massive body crashed to the ground with a final, earth-shattering thud. And the glow in its red eyes faded. Silence descended upon the street, broken only by the whimpering of the injured woman and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Naruto stared at the fallen giant, then at Sif, her greatsword resting casually on her shoulder, her expression one of cool competence. "Impressive," Naruto blurted out, genuinely awestruck. Sif turned her stormy gaze back to him, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Years of practice, mortal. And a healthy dose of Asgardian steel." She studied him more closely now, her eyes lingering on the faint golden aura that still flickered around his hands. But you possess a curious energy. Familiar, yet different. Angela stepped forward, her own expression thoughtful. He is awakening. He carries the essence of Midgard's ancient guardian. Sif's eyebrows rose in surprise. The sage god. Legends speak of him, but few truly believe he existed. And you say this, mortal, is his reincarnation. She looked from Angela to Naruto, her gaze sharp and assessing. Naruto felt a flush of embarrassment under their intense scrutiny. He was still just Naruto, the clumsy student. How could he possibly be this legendary figure they spoke of? It is complicated, Angela admitted, glancing at Naruto. His memories are fragmented, his power only beginning to manifest. Sif sheathed her greatsword with a resounding click. Complicated indeed, a dormant godling meddling with Jotun brutes. This warrants a more thorough investigation. Come, both of you. I will take you to Asgard. Odin will want to know of this development. As the sirens wailed closer, their flashing lights illuminating the scene of destruction, Naruto looked at Angela, then at Sif. One was a celestial warrior with wings of moonlight, the other a formidable Asgardian with the bearing of a seasoned veteran. His life, just a few hours ago, had consisted of dodging Issei's perverted antics and cramming for exams. Now, he was being invited to a realm of gods by a warrior who had just casually decapitated a frost giant. The hum within him resonated with a strange sense of familiarity at the mention of Asgard, a faint echo of a life lived amongst the thunder of the heavens. Fear still lingered, but it was now overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of destiny, a feeling that his ordinary life had irrevocably changed. As Sif gestured towards a shimmering portal that began to open in the air, swirling with golden light, Naruto took a deep breath. He had no idea what awaited him in Asgard, but one thing was certain, the mundane life of Naruto Uzumaki was over. The age of the sage god, in whatever clumsy, uncertain way, had truly begun. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Halls of the All-Father. The transition through the Bifrost felt less like travel, and more like being disassembled and instantly reassembled on a molecular level, accompanied by a symphony of colors and a sensation of pure, exhilarating energy. One moment, Naruto was standing on a ravaged street in Kuo town, the next, he was blinking against the radiant light of Asgard, the air thick with the scent of ozone and something akin to blooming starlight. The sight that greeted him stole his breath. Golden spires pierced a sky of perpetual twilight, connected by bridges of shimmering light that arced over valleys of verdant green and cascading waterfalls that seemed to flow upwards. Imposing figures clad in ornate armor strode with an air of effortless power, their voices booming with laughter or sharp commands. Flying vessels, sleek and shimmering, navigated the aerial pathways with practiced ease. It was a realm of myth made manifest, a breathtaking spectacle that dwarfed anything Naruto had ever imagined. Sif, seemingly unfazed by the grandeur, clapped Naruto on the shoulder, her grip surprisingly strong. Welcome to Asgard, mortal. Try not to gawk too much, you'll attract unwanted attention. Angela, her wings now fully extended and shimmering in the Asgardian light, nodded curtly to a passing warrior. The All-Father awaits. We should not keep him. They were led through bustling courtyards and vast halls adorned with intricate carvings depicting legendary battles and mythical creatures. The very stones seemed to hum with ancient power. Naruto felt a strange sense of familiarity amidst the overwhelming newness, flashes of images, grand feasts, solemn councils. The clang of weapons in training yards, flickering at the edges of his consciousness. Finally, they arrived at a colossal set of golden doors, guarded by two stern-faced warriors whose armor gleamed like polished suns. Sif exchanged a few curt words with them, and the massive doors swung inward, revealing a throne room of unimaginable scale. At the far end of the hall, seated upon a magnificent throne carved from what looked like solidified moonlight, sat a figure radiating power and authority, Odin All-Father, the ruler of Asgard. His single piercing eye seemed to see through Naruto's very soul, and the weight of his gaze was almost unbearable. By his side stood a regal woman with flowing dark hair, radiating an aura of calm wisdom, Frigga, the queen of Asgard. A hush fell over the hall as Sif and Angela knelt before the throne. Naruto, feeling woefully out of place in his tattered jeans and faded t-shirt, awkwardly followed suit. Rise, Odin's voice boomed, resonating through the vast hall like distant thunder. His gaze remained fixed on Naruto. So, this is the mortal who stirs with the echoes of Midgard's forgotten guardian. Naruto swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. He could feel the weight of centuries of Asgardian history and power focused on him. Yes, sir. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Odin's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. Naruto Uzumaki, a simple name for one who carries such an ancient burden. He gestured with his Gingnur, his legendary spear, which rested beside his throne. Tell me, mortal, what do you know of the sage god? Naruto struggled to find the words. Only what I've seen in dreams, sir. Images of battles, of great power, and the name itself. And the Jotunheim frost giant that attacked your realm. Odin's gaze sharpened. What is your connection to its appearance? I don't know, sir, Naruto confessed. It just showed up. Angela said it felt like it was from Jotunheim. Sif stepped forward. All father, I arrived to find this Jotun already engaged with Angela and this mortal. Uzumaki displayed a peculiar energy, unlike anything I have encountered. He struck the giant with a force that belied his mortal frame, hindering its attack. Odin's gaze returned to Naruto, more intently now. You wielded power you do not understand, mortal. Naruto nodded, feeling a surge of the golden energy within him in response to Odin's scrutiny. It just happened, sir. Like something inside me reacted. Frigga spoke, her voice gentle but carrying an underlying strength. The awakening has begun, Odin. The echoes of his past are stirring within him. She looked at Naruto with a compassionate gaze. This must be a great shock to you, young one. It is, ma'am, Naruto admitted. I don't understand any of it. Odin rose from his throne, the movement causing a ripple of power to flow through the hall. He descended the steps, his single eye never leaving Naruto. He stopped a few feet away, his presence radiating an ancient, almost primordial power. The sage god was a protector, a guardian against the forces that seek to unravel the fabric of the nine worlds, Odin stated, his voice low and resonant. His power was immense, his wisdom hard-earned over countless ages. If his essence truly resides within you, Naruto Uzumaki, then you bear a responsibility far greater than you can currently comprehend. He paused, then continued. The appearance of a frost giant so far from Jotunheim is no mere coincidence. It suggests a stirring in the dark corners of the realms, a testing of our defense in the absence of Midgard's guardian. Your awakening may be the key to understanding this unrest. Suddenly, a horn blared throughout the halls of Asgard, a long, mournful note that echoed with urgency. Every Asgardian in the throne room tensed, their hands instinctively moving towards their weapons. What is it? Odin's voice was sharp, his earlier calm replaced by a warrior's alertness. A messenger, clad in swift-moving armor, burst through the golden doors, breathless. All father, Heimdall has sighted movement on the borders of Jotunheim. A large force, massing near the ancient pass. And there are signs of dark magic. Unlike anything we have seen before. A collective murmur rippled through the Asgardian warriors. Odin's single eye narrowed, his expression grim. Jotunheim, massing a force, and dark magic. He turned his gaze back to Naruto, a new intensity in his one eye. Your awakening, mortal, may have come not a moment too soon. It seems the realms are in peril once more. He turned to Sif and Angela. Prepare yourselves. Gather the Einherjar. We ride for the borders of Jotunheim. As the Asgardian warriors sprang into action, the throne room buzzing with urgent preparations, Odin looked at Naruto. His gaze unwavering. You will come with us, Naruto Uzumaki. You may not yet understand your power, but your very presence may hold the key to what is unfolding. And perhaps, a flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. It is time for the sage god of Midgard to remember his true purpose. Naruto stood amidst the flurry of activity, feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. He was a student from a backwater town, suddenly thrust into the heart of Asgardian power, on the brink of a potential war with giants. He still didn't understand who or what the sage god was, or why his essence resided within him. But as he looked at the determined faces of the Asgardian warriors, and the resolute gaze of Angela, a spark of that ancient power within him flickered to life. He might be out of his depth, but he wouldn't back down. The fate of realms he barely knew might very well rest on the shoulders of a clumsy, bewildered mortal who was just beginning to remember he was something far, far more. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Whispers on the Wind of Jotunheim. The journey to Jotunheim was a stark contrast to the radiant beauty of Asgard. The Bifrost deposited them onto a desolate, windswept plain of black ice and jagged, snow-dusted rock. The air was bitingly cold, carrying the scent of frost and something else, a faint, metallic tang that spoke of ancient battles and spilled giant blood. Above, a bruised purple sky churned with ominous clouds, and the only light came from a weak, struggling sun that barely pierced the gloom. Naruto shivered, pulling his thin jacket tighter around himself. He felt woefully unprepared for this frozen wasteland. Beside him, Sif and Angela seemed unaffected by the harsh conditions, their armor radiating a subtle warmth. Asgardian warriors, clad in thick furs over their metal, moved with grim determination, their breath misting in the frigid air. Odin, mounted on his eight-legged steed Sleipnir, led the way, his one eye scanning the horizon with an intensity that seemed to pierce the swirling snow. The Einherjar, Asgard's elite warriors, marched in disciplined ranks behind him, their weapons held ready. "Welcome to Jotunheim, mortal," Sif said, her voice a low rumble that barely carried over the howling wind. "Not quite as welcoming as Asgard, is it?" Naruto could only nod, his teeth chattering slightly. "It's cold," Angela, her wings tightly folded against her back to conserve warmth, added, "and dangerous. The frost giants are formidable foes, even in small numbers. A massing of their forces, it bodes ill." As they advanced, the landscape grew more treacherous, with deep crevasses hidden beneath layers of snow and the occasional glimpse of hulking figures moving in the distance, frost giants, their silhouettes blending with the jagged rocks. Suddenly, a guttural roar echoed across the plains, followed by the whistling sound of projectiles hurtling through the air. Giant-sized ice spears rained down upon the Asgardian ranks. "Ambush!" Odin's voice boomed, and the Einherjar immediately formed shield walls, the ice spears shattering harmlessly against their sturdy defenses. "They knew we were coming," Sif growled. Drawing her greatsword, someone alerted them. The frost giants emerged from behind the rocky outcrops, a chaotic horde of towering figures wielding massive ice clubs and axes. Their skin was the color of glaciers, their eyes glowed with cold fury, and their roars echoed across the frozen wasteland. "Einherjar, advance," Odin commanded, and the Asgardian warriors surged forward, their battle cries ringing out in defiance of the giants' thunderous roars. Naruto found himself caught in the midst of the chaos, the clash of steel against ice echoing around him. He watched in awe and terror as Sif and Angela moved through the fray-like blurs of motion, their strikes swift and deadly, felling giants twice their size. He tried to stay out of the immediate line of fire, the raw power within him thrumming with a nervous energy. He still lacked the control to wield it effectively, and he knew he would be more of a hindrance than a help in direct combat against these behemoths. Just then, a smaller, swifter figure detached itself from the main giant force. It was still significantly larger than Naruto, but leaner and more agile than the hulking frost giants. Its skin was a deep blue, and it wielded a wickedly curved blade of ice. It moved with a predatory grace, its eyes fixed on Naruto. A Midgardian whelp, it snarled, its voice like the cracking of ice. "What business do you have on Jotunheim?" Naruto instinctively felt a surge of the golden energy within him, a protective response to the creature's hostile intent. I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper against the wind and the din of battle. The blue-skinned giant lunged, its ice blade flashing. Naruto reacted purely on instinct, channeling the golden energy into his hands and lashing out. The impact felt like hitting solid rock, but the blue giant recoiled with a hiss of pain, a patch of its icy skin momentarily turning a dull gray where Naruto had struck. "What sorcery is this?" the giant snarled, its eyes widening with surprise. Before Naruto could answer, a figure landed between them, her crimson cloak swirling. Valkyrie, her expression grim, her hand resting on the hilt of her own formidable blade. "Out of my way, Jotun scum," she growled, her voice hard as steel. "This one is under my protection." The blue giant hesitated, its gaze flicking between Valkyrie's battle-scarred face and the faint golden aura still surrounding Naruto. It clearly recognized the exiled Valkyrie and the reputation that preceded her. With a frustrated snarl, it melted back into the chaos of the larger battle. "You should not be here, mortal," Valkyrie said, her stormy eyes assessing Naruto. "This is no place for someone like you." Her tone held a mixture of concern and a familiar cynicism. "I didn't exactly ask to be here," Naruto retorted, still a bit shaken from his encounter. "But I'm not going to just hide while everyone else fights." Valkyrie studied him for a long moment, a flicker of something unreadable in her gaze. "Stubborn, just like him," she muttered, almost to herself. Then, her expression hardened. "Stay close, then, and try not to get yourself killed. This is going to get much worse." Her words proved prophetic. The initial ambush was just the first wave. As the Asgardians pushed deeper into the frozen plains, they encountered increasingly organized resistance. The frost giants fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their massive forms and icy weaponry posing a significant threat even to the skilled Einherjar. Naruto, keeping close to Valkyrie, found himself caught in the periphery of the fighting. He witnessed acts of incredible bravery and brutal violence. He saw Asgardian warriors fall, their golden armor stained with dark giant blood. And he saw frost giants crumble into icy shards under the might of Asgardian steel. He still struggled to control the power within him. It would surge at unpredictable moments, granting him bursts of strength or speed. But he couldn't direct it with any precision. He felt like a vessel overflowing with a force he didn't understand. As the battle raged, a chilling wind swept across the plains, carrying with it whispers that seemed to slither into Naruto's mind. They were not words he understood, but they resonated with a primal fear, a sense of ancient malice. The sky above darkened further, and the air crackled with an unnatural energy. "Dark magic," Angela said grimly, landing beside Valkyrie and Naruto, her sword dripping with frost giant blood. "Something is bolstering their strength." Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. From the depths of the frozen earth, grotesque figures began to emerge. They were larger than the standard frost giants, their bodies twisted and contorted, their eyes burning with an eerie green light. They wielded weapons of jagged black ice that seemed to radiate a palpable coldness. "Rime trolls," Valkyrie cursed under her breath. "This is worse than I thought. Something powerful is at play here." The rime trolls waded into the battle, their dark magic enhancing the frost giants and wreaking havoc on the Asgardian ranks. The tide of the battle began to turn. Odin, mounted on Sleipnir, rode through the chaos, his spear Gungnir crackling with divine energy. He struck down rime trolls with bolts of lightning, his presence a beacon of hope amidst the growing darkness. But even the All-Father seemed hard-pressed by the sheer number and the power of the dark magic at play. Naruto felt a surge of desperation. He had to do something. He focused, with all his will on the golden energy within him, trying to shape it, to control it. He remembered the visions of the sage god, the staff of starlight. He reached out with his mind, imagining a weapon, a focus for the raw power. The humming within him intensified, building to a crescendo. He felt a searing pain in his hands, and when he opened his eyes, he was no longer holding empty air. In his grasp was a staff, not of starlight, but of solid, shimmering gold, pulsing with a warm, powerful energy. It felt strangely familiar, as if he had wielded it for centuries. A gasp escaped Valkyrie's lips. Angela's eyes widened in surprise. Even across the battlefield, Odin seemed to sense the shift, his single eye flicking towards Naruto. Naruto gripped the golden staff, a sense of purpose, long dormant, beginning to awaken within him. He still didn't fully understand what was happening, but in the frozen wastes of Jotunheim, surrounded by giants and dark magic, Naruto Uzumaki, the clumsy student, finally held the first tangible piece of his forgotten destiny. The whispers on the wind of Jotunheim seemed to quiet, as if even the hostile realm held its breath in anticipation. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Serpent's Shadow. The golden staff felt like an extension of Naruto's very being, humming with a familiar resonance that calmed the chaotic energy within him. The searing pain in his hands had vanished, replaced by a sense of grounded power, a connection to something ancient and vast. He gripped the staff tighter, its smooth, warm surface a stark contrast to the biting cold of Jotunheim. The rime troll that had been advancing towards Valkyrie faltered, its glowing green eyes widening in surprise at the sudden manifestation of the golden weapon. It let out a guttural snarl and swung its jagged black ice club at Naruto. Instinct took over. Naruto moved with a speed and grace he hadn't known he possessed, sidestepping the clumsy blow. He swung the golden staff, not with brute force, but with a fluid motion that felt both natural and precise. The staff connected with the rhyme troll's arm with a resounding crack, and a wave of pure golden energy erupted from the point of contact. The dark ice club shattered into brittle fragments, and the rhyme troll roared in agony as its corrupted flesh began to smoke and char. Valkyrie stared at Naruto, her usual cynicism momentarily replaced by astonishment. "By the Norns," she breathed. Angela, witnessing the display from a short distance, nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. The power of Midgard stirs within him. Emboldened by his success, Naruto turned his attention to the other rhyme trolls wreaking havoc on the Asgardian ranks. He moved through the battlefield with a newfound confidence, the golden staff a beacon of light against the encroaching darkness. Each strike of the staff unleashed a wave of purifying energy, disrupting the dark magic that empowered the frost giants and searing the corrupted flesh of the rhyme trolls. The tide of the battle began to shift. The Asgardian warriors, witnessing Naruto's sudden display of power, fought with renewed vigor, their morale boosted by the unexpected turn of events. Even Odin, observing from his vantage point on Sleipnir, let out a satisfied rumble. However, the surge of dark magic hadn't ceased entirely. As Naruto fought, he noticed a focal point of the oppressive energy, a towering figure standing on a distant, snow-covered ridge. It was larger than even the rhyme trolls, its form wreathed in shadow, and it held aloft a staff of twisted black wood that pulsed with malevolent power. Something is directing them, Naruto realized, pointing his golden staff towards the shadowy figure. That thing on the ridge, it's controlling the dark magic. Valkyrie followed his gaze. A sorcerer of Jotunheim, likely. They wield powerful but often chaotic magic. "We need to stop it," Naruto said, his resolve hardening. "As long as it's there, the giants will keep fighting with this dark power." He began to move towards the ridge, but Angela intercepted him. "It is too dangerous for you to go alone. The sorcerer will be heavily guarded." "Then we go together," Naruto said, his gaze determined. He looked at Valkyrie. "Will you come with us?" Valkyrie hesitated for a moment, then a grim smile touched her lips. "Against my better judgment, yes. Let's see if this sage god can live up to the hype." With Angela soaring through the air and Valkyrie moving swiftly across the ice, Naruto followed, the golden staff held ready. The frost giants and me trolls seemed to focus their attacks on them, sensing the threat they posed. The journey to the ridge was fraught with peril. They had to fight their way through waves of enraged giants and corrupted trolls, each step taking them further into the heart of the enemy's forces. Naruto found himself relying on instinct and the power of the golden staff, learning to wield it more effectively with each passing moment. He discovered he could channel blasts of pure energy, creating protective shields, and even imbue his strikes with a concussive force that sent the giants stumbling back. As they neared the ridge, the shadowy figure intensified its efforts, unleashing bolts of dark energy that crackled through the air. The ground around them began to churn, and grotesque shadow creatures clawed their way out of the ice. "The sorcerer is desperate," Angela observed, deflecting a bolt of dark energy with her sword. "We are getting close." Finally, they reached the base of the ridge. The ascent was steep and treacherous, the air growing colder and thicker with dark magic. They fought their way to the summit, where the towering sorcerer awaited them, surrounded by a coterie of heavily armored frost giants and two particularly large and menacing rhyme trolls. The sorcerer was a gaunt figure with skin as pale as death, his eyes glowing with the same eerie green light as the rhyme trolls. He wore robes of black ice and clutched his twisted staff like a lifeline. "So," the sorcerer hissed, his voice like the scraping of ice across stone. "The All-Father has sent his pets. And what is this?" A Midgardian child wielding the power of the Forgotten One. His gaze fixated on Naruto's golden staff, a flicker of surprise and then rage in his eyes. "This child is about to end your little tantrum," Naruto retorted. Gripping the staff firmly, the sorcerer laughed, a cold, rasping sound. You think you can stand against the might of Jotunheim, mortal? We will drown you in ice and darkness." He raised his staff, and the air around them crackled with malevolent energy. The frost giants roared, and the rime trolls lunged forward. The battle on the ridge was fierce and desperate. Angela engaged the rime trolls, her celestial sword clashing against their dark ice weapons. Valkyrie moved with brutal efficiency, her greatsword cutting through the ranks of frost giants. Naruto focused his attention on the sorcerer, knowing he was the key to ending the conflict. The sorcerer unleashed bolts of dark energy, waves of freezing mist, and summoned shadowy tendrils that lashed out with surprising speed. Naruto had to rely on his agility and the protective energy of the golden staff to evade the attacks. He realized he couldn't reach the sorcerer directly without dealing with the frost giants guarding him. He needed a diversion. He channeled a large amount of golden energy into the staff and unleashed a blinding flash of light, momentarily stunning the giants. Taking advantage of the chaos, Naruto leapt forward, propelled by a surge of energy from the staff. The sorcerer, momentarily blinded, recoiled in surprise. Naruto swung the golden staff with all his might, aiming for the sorcerer's staff of dark wood. The impact was like colliding with a block of solid ice, but the golden energy of Naruto's staff resonated with the dark magic of the sorcerer's weapon. A shockwave of opposing energies erupted, throwing both of them back. The sorcerer's staff cracked and splintered, the eerie green light within it flickering and dying. Without his focus, the dark magic that had been empowering the frost giants began to dissipate. The rime trolls shrieked in pain as the purifying energy of Naruto's staff weakened their corrupted forms. Enraged and disarmed, the sorcerer lunged at Naruto with surprising speed for his gaunt frame, his icy fingernails extended like claws. Naruto, still recovering from the energy blast, barely had time to react. Suddenly, a blur of green moved between them. Gamora, her face set in a grim scowl, her twin blades flashing in the dim light of Jotunheim, intercepted the sorcerer's attack. The wicked curves of her blades found their mark, and the sorcerer gasped. A dark ichor seeping from the wounds. He staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief, before collapsing onto the icy ground, his life force extinguished. Naruto stared at Gamora, who stood between him and the fallen sorcerer, her blades still dripping. "Gamora, what are you doing here?" Gamora turned her piercing gaze on him, her expression unreadable. "I had my own reasons for being in this frozen wasteland. And I don't appreciate dark magic polluting the galaxy." She glanced at the golden staff in his hand, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "And you've acquired a rather interesting toy." The arrival of Gamora, a figure from a completely different corner of the cosmos, added another layer of complexity to the unfolding events. The battle on Jotunheim was far from over. But with the sorcerer defeated and the dark magic weakened, the tide had clearly turned. As Naruto looked at the enigmatic woman who had just saved him, he knew that his awakening as the sage God of Midgard was drawing him into a conflict far greater and more intricate than he could have ever imagined, reaching across realms and even the vastness of space. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Scars of the Past, Seeds of Trust. The immediate threat of the massed Jotun force diminished rapidly with the sorcerer's demise. The rime trolls, weakened and disoriented, were swiftly dispatched by Angela and the remaining Einherjar. The frost giants, no longer empowered by dark magic, fought with a more primal, less coordinated ferocity, making them easier targets for the disciplined Asgardian warriors. Gamora, after ensuring the sorcerer was truly dead, turned her attention back to Naruto. Her usual guarded demeanor seemed slightly softened, replaced by a keen interest in the golden staff he still held. "That weapon, it radiates an energy I've encountered before, though rarely," she said, her voice surprisingly analytical. "Ancient, powerful, almost divine. It just appeared," Naruto explained, still feeling the strange resonance within the staff. "I didn't even know I could do that." "Clearly, there's more to you than meets the eye, Midgardian," Gamora remarked, a hint of a smirk playing on her lips. Sheathing her blades, she surveyed the battlefield with a detached air. "My business here is concluded. Though I must admit, the timing of your little light show was convenient." Before Naruto could inquire further about her business, Sif approached, her expression a mixture of relief and sternness. "Uzumaki, you showed remarkable resilience out there. And that weapon? She eyed He golden staff with a mixture of awe and suspicion. It is unlike anything I have seen in Asgard. It seems the legends of the sage god were not entirely fabricated, Angela added, landing gracefully beside them. His power is awakening within him, though in a manner none could have predicted. Odin, having dismounted Sleipnir, approached with a thoughtful expression. His single eye focused on Naruto, then on the golden staff. The power of the Guardian returns to Midgard's soil, albeit in an unexpected vessel. This changes things. He addressed Gamora, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. You are far from your usual territories, daughter of Thanos. What brings you to the borders of Jotunheim? Gamora met Odin's gaze without flinching. My reasons are my own, All-Father. Suffice it to say, they align with the disruption of chaotic forces. She gave a curt nod to Naruto. Farewell, Midgardian. Our paths may cross again. With a swift, almost silent movement, she vanished into the swirling snow, leaving Naruto wondering about her true motives and the nature of her business. As the Asgardians began the task of tending to their wounded and securing the Jotun prisoners, Odin turned his attention back to Naruto. This staff, do you understand its purpose? Its power? Naruto shook his head. Not really, sir. It just feels right. Like I know how to use it, even though I never have before. It is a focus, Frigga said gently, approaching them. A conduit for the power that lies dormant within you. With practice, you may learn to wield it with greater control. The journey back to Asgard was less tense. Though the weight of what had transpired hung in the air, Naruto found himself walking beside Valkyrie, a comfortable silence settling between them. You handled yourself surprisingly well out there, mortal, she said finally, her gaze fixed on the desolate landscape. Especially considering you were wielding a weapon you just conjured out of thin air. Thanks, Naruto replied, feeling a sense of accomplishment despite the lingering exhaustion. You were pretty amazing out there yourself. Valkyrie snorted softly. It's what I do. Though, I haven't had a proper brawl like that in a long time. A shadow crossed her face. The thrill, it's a dangerous thing. Naruto sensed a deeper pain beneath her gruff exterior. Why were you exiled? He asked, the question escaping before he could fully consider its implications. Valkyrie's steps faltered, her gaze hardened, and for a moment, Naruto feared he had crossed a line. Then, she sighed, the fight draining out of her posture. It's a long story, mortal. One filled with betrayal and loss. She looked out at the bleak horizon, her eyes distant. I once led the Valkyrier, Odin's shield maidens. We were tasked with guiding the souls of the worthy fallen to Valhalla. But during a battle against a force too powerful for even Asgard to contain, we were slaughtered. I was the only survivor. Odin, in his grief and anger, blamed me. He stripped me of my honor, my purpose, and banished me from Asgard. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, yet Naruto could feel the weight of her sorrow. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. Valkyrie gave a bitter laugh. Don't be. It was a long time ago. I've made my peace with it, mostly. She glanced at Naruto, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. But you wield a power that hasn't been seen on Midgard in millennia. Why do you think it chose to awaken now, in you? Naruto thought about the dreams, the unsettling visions, Angela's words about the shifting balance. I don't know for sure. But Angela said some threats are stirring. Maybe I was needed. As they continued their journey, a fragile seed of trust seemed to sprout between them, born from the shock-red experience of battle and the glimpse into each other's hidden burdens. Back in Asgard, Naruto was brought before Odin and Frigga once more. The All-Father's expression was serious. The attack on Jotunheim's borders was not merely a territorial dispute. The dark magic they employed, it bears the mark of ancient, malevolent forces, entities that predate even the Aesir. Who were they working with? Naruto asked, a knot of worry tightening in his stomach. We do not yet know, Odin replied. But this is a grave matter. The 9 worlds are more vulnerable than they have been in ages. He looked at Naruto. Your awakening, while unexpected, may be our only hope against this growing darkness. You must learn to control your power, to understand the legacy you carry. He gestured, and a shimmering image appeared in the air before them, a celestial map of the 9 realms, interconnected by the roots and branches of a colossal tree. This is Yggdrasil, the world tree. It binds all of creation. The sage god was its protector on Midgard's branch, ensuring the balance was maintained. Odin pointed to a shadowy area lurking at the edges of the map, a creeping darkness that seemed to press against the boundaries of the realms. This darkness is stirring. It seeks to unravel the threads of Yggdrasil, to plunge the 9 worlds into chaos. You, Naruto Uzumaki, must find your place in this coming storm. The weight of Odin's words settled heavily on Naruto's shoulders. He was no longer just a student from Kuo Town with strange dreams. He was a key player in a cosmic drama, a guardian in the making. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but for the first time since his awakening began, Naruto felt a sense of purpose, a flicker of the ancient responsibility that echoed within his very being. He looked at the image of Yggdrasil, the serpent of his visions now seeming less like a nightmare and more like a symbol of the immense power and the perilous duty that lay before him. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. Lessons in Divinity, Echoes of Longing. In the days that followed the skirmish in Jotunheim, Naruto found himself an unexpected guest in Asgard. While the Einherjar prepared for potential further incursions and Odin delved into ancient lore seeking the source of the dark magic, Naruto began his tentative journey into understanding his inherited power. His primary instructor was Angela. Her celestial patience, honed over centuries of training recruits in heaven, proved invaluable in guiding Naruto's raw, untamed abilities. Their training sessions took place in a vast, secluded training yard overlooking the seemingly endless Asgardian landscape. Angela, clad in her training leathers, moved with fluid grace, demonstrating precise strikes and the channeling of celestial energy. Naruto, still clumsy in his movements but brimming with untapped potential, struggled to emulate her control. "The power is there, Naruto," Angela would say, her voice firm but encouraging as he inadvertently scorched a patch of the training ground with a wild burst of golden energy. "You must learn to focus it, to direct it with intention, not simply react." She taught him meditation techniques, breathing exercises designed to harmonize his mortal form with the divine energy within. She explained the fundamental principles of energy manipulation, drawing parallels to the chakra control he was familiar with, but emphasizing the vastly different scale and nature of the sage god's power. "Think of it not as a stream, but as an ocean," she instructed, gesturing to the distant, shimmering horizon. "Vast, powerful, and capable of both immense destruction and profound creation. You must learn to navigate its currents." Their training sessions were rigorous, pushing Naruto to his limits. He learned to summon and dismiss the golden staff with greater ease, to channel energy into focused blasts, and to create rudimentary shields of protective light. He even began to tap into the memories associated with the staff. Flashes of ancient battles and forgotten techniques surfacing in his mind during moments of intense focus. Between training sessions, Naruto often found himself in the company of Lady Sif. Her approach to his development was less about esoteric principles and more about practical application. She sparred with him using blunted Asgardian weapons, testing his reflexes and teaching him the fundamentals of combat against a seasoned warrior. "You have the raw power, boy," she'd grunt, deflecting one of his clumsy swings with ease before sweeping his legs out from under him. "But you fight like a drunken tavern patron. Strength without skill is a blunt axe." Sif's training was brutal but effective. She instilled in him the importance of footwork, timing, and the strategic use of his environment. She also shared tales of Asgardian heroes and legendary battles, subtly weaving in lessons about courage, perseverance, and the responsibilities that came with wielding great power. Valkyrie, while not directly involved in his training, often observed from a distance, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Occasionally, she would offer cryptic advice, her words ced with her characteristic cynicism but often surprisingly insightful. "Don't let that shiny stick fool you, mortal," she'd say, leaning against a training dummy with a sardonic grin. "Power doesn't solve everything. Knowing when not to fight, when to outwit your opponent, that's often the greater strength." Despite the demanding training and the looming threat to the realms, Naruto found moments of unexpected peace in Asgard. He would wander through the majestic city, marveling at its wonders and occasionally engaging in tentative conversations with the Asgardian citizens, who regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and respect. He even shared a surprisingly convivial meal with Thor, the god of thunder, who, upon his return from some far-flung adventure, greeted Naruto with booming laughter and hearty tales. Yet, amidst the grandeur and the burgeoning sense of purpose, Naruto couldn't shake a persistent feeling of longing. The memories of his life on Midgard, his friends, even the mundane routines, felt distant and dreamlike. He missed the familiar comfort of Ichiraku ramen, the boisterous companionship of Issei, even the exasperated sighs of his teachers. One evening, as the TW in moons of Asgard cast long shadows across the royal gardens, Naruto found himself alone, gazing up at the alien constellations. A soft voice startled him. "You seem troubled, young one." He turned to see Frigga approaching, her presence radiating a gentle warmth. She sat beside him on a stone bench, her expression kind. "It's just, I miss home," Naruto admitted, the words feeling strange and almost selfish in the face of the cosmic threats they were facing. Frigga smiled softly. "That is natural. Midgard is your home, the place where you lived and learned. Though you carry a great destiny, Chi does not erase the bonds you have formed." She paused, her gaze turning thoughtful. The sage god, in his many lifetimes, walked the path between realms. He understood the value of both the mortal and the divine. "Do not forsake the connections you have made in your mortal life, Naruto. They may prove to be your greatest strength." Her words resonated deeply within him, a comforting reminder of the life he had left behind. He realized that his connection to Midgard was not just a past he had to overcome, but a vital part of who he was, even with the awakening of his divine heritage. As the days turned into weeks, Naruto's control over his powers steadily grew. He learned to channel the golden energy with greater precision, to wield the staff with a growing sense of mastery. He was still far from the level of skill displayed by Angela or Sif, but the raw potential within him was undeniable. One afternoon, during a particularly intense training session with Angela, as he deflected ease of her celestial strikes with the golden staff, a new memory surfaced, a vivid image of himself, as the sage god, standing on a similar training ground, sparring with a figure wreathed in shadow. Their movements lightning fast and their power immense. The face of the shadowy figure remained obscured, but the memory left Naruto with a profound sense of loss and a yearning for a connection he couldn't quite place. Later that day, as he was practicing his energy manipulation, he inadvertently created a shimmering projection, a fleeting image of a woman with fiery red hair and a fierce, determined expression. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving Naruto with a jolt of recognition he couldn't explain. The longing he had felt earlier intensified, a deep ache for someone he couldn't remember knowing. He sought out Frigga, hoping she could shed some light on these fragmented memories. The queen listened patiently, her expression growing thoughtful as Naruto described the shadowy sparring partner and the fleeting image of the red-haired woman. "The sage god lived for eons, Naruto," Frigga said gently. "His life was filled with alliances, friendships, and loves. The auras stirring within you may be echoes of those past connections." The shadowy figure, it could have been any number of powerful beings he encountered. As for the woman, her image may become clearer as your memories continue to surface. Her words offered some comfort, but the longing remained, a poignant reminder of the vast history that lay dormant within him, a history that held not only immense power but also the bittersweet echoes of lost connections. As he continued his training, Naruto knew that unlocking his past was not just about understanding his powers, but also about piecing together the fragments of a life lived across ages, a life that held both the weight of responsibility and the lingering warmth of forgotten love. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Raven's Warning, The Gathering Storm. The relative peace of Naruto's training in Asgard was shattered by the arrival of a frantic messenger, his face pale with urgency. He burst into the training yard, interrupting a sparring session between Naruto and Sif. His words tumbling out in a rushed torrent. "All Father commands your immediate presence. Heimdall has detected a significant incursion. Not on Jotunheim's borders, but on Midgard itself." A hush fell over the training yard. Sif lowered her practiced sword, her brow furrowed with concern. Angela, who had been observing Naruto's progress, landed silently beside them, her expression grim. Naruto felt a jolt of fear, his thoughts immediately turning to the familiar streets of Kuo Town, to the people he knew. Midgard. What happened? A force unlike any we have encountered, the messenger stammered. Still catching his breath. They arrived through a tear in the fabric of space, near a major population center. Heimdall reports they are heavily armored, wielding advanced weaponry. And their intentions are hostile. Odin's voice, amplified by his power, echoed through the training yard. Naruto Uzumaki, Angela of Heaven, Sif of Asgard. To the Bifrost. Midgard is in danger. There was no time for questions. They raced towards the shimmering portal, the urgency of the situation palpable. The journey through the Bifrost was swift and jarring, and they arrived not in the familiar splendor of Asgard, but high above a scene of chaos and destruction. Below them, a city skyline was marred by plumes of smoke and the flickering orange glow of fires. Strange, angular vehicles hovered in the air, firing energy weapons at terrified civilians. Armored figures, clad in sleek, dark suits, moved with ruthless efficiency, their weapons emitting crackling bursts of energy. What in the nine realms? Sif breathed, her hand instinctively going to the hilt of her greatsword. Angela's eyes narrowed, assessing the invaders with a warrior's keen gaze. Their technology is advanced, unlike anything I have seen in the known realms. And their discipline, they move with the precision of a trained military force. Naruto felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. This was his home. The place Frigga had reminded him was still a vital part of him. Seeing it under attack ignited a fierce resolve within him. Who are they? He demanded, his voice tight with fury. Suddenly, a familiar, booming voice echoed in their minds, seemingly coming from nowhere. Intruders, realm breakers, you trespass on the domain of Thanos. Gamora's image flickered briefly in Naruto's mind. Our earlier words about her business, on Jotunheim suddenly taking on a more ominous tone. Thanos, Sif growled. The Mad Titan. What does he want with Midgard? His ambitions are vast and terrifying, Angela replied, her expression grim. He seeks power, dominion over all things. Midgard may be a stepping stone in his grand, destructive design. Odin's voice echoed in their minds once more. Naruto, the protection of Midgard falls to you. Angela, Sif, aid him. Drive these invaders back. Without hesitation, Angela launched herself into the fray, her celestial sword blazing with righteous energy. Sif followed close behind, her greatsword cleaving through the alien technology with brutal efficiency. Naruto, clutching his golden staff, hesitated for only a moment. The sight of the destruction below, the fear in the voices of the fleeing civilians, spurred him into action. He focused his will, channeling the golden energy, and with a powerful thrust of the staff, he propelled himself downwards. A streak of golden light against the smoky sky. He landed amidst a group of the armored invaders, the impact creating a shockwave that sent them staggering back. They turned their weapons on him, firing bursts of energy that crackled dangerously close. Naruto raised his staff, deflecting the blasts with shields of golden light, the raw power of the sage god surging through him. The invaders were formidable, their weaponry advanced and their tactics coordinated. But they were unprepared for the raw power of a being awakening to his divine heritage. Naruto moved through their ranks like a force of nature. The golden staff a whirlwind of light and energy. Each strike shattered their armor and sent them flying. Angela and Sif fought with equal ferocity, their centuries of combat experience proving invaluable. Angela moved with the speed and precision of a celestial warrior, her sword a blur of silver light that cut through the invaders' ranks. Sif, with her Asgardian strength and skill, met the invaders head-on. Her greatsword a hammer blow against their technological defenses. Despite their combined efforts, the invaders were numerous, and their advanced weaponry posed a constant threat. Naruto realized they needed to find a way to disrupt their command structure, to stem the tide of their assault. Just then, a figure swooped down from the sky, landing beside Naruto with a familiar whoosh of wings. Valkyrie, her expression grim, her hand gripping her sword. Odin sent me as reinforcement, she said, her gaze sweeping across the chaotic scene. Looks like this little of yours has attracted some unwanted attention. They're working for Thanos, Naruto explained, deflecting another energy blast. We need to find whoever is leading them. As they fought their way through the invaders, they began to notice a pattern. The attacks seemed to be focused on securing specific locations, key infrastructure points within the city. Suddenly, A holographic image flick read into existence above one of the hovering vehicles, a stern, purple-skinned figure with a massive chin and cold, calculating eyes. Thanos, your resistance is futile, his voice boomed, echoing across the battlefield. Midgard will fall, it is but a small price to pay for the balance of the universe. Naruto felt a surge of defiance. This tyrannical being, threatening his home, would not succeed. He focused his power, his eyes blazing with golden light. You hear me, Thanos. Naruto projected his voice, amplified by his divine energy, towards the holographic image. This is my world, you will not take it. The holographic image flickered, Thanos' cold gaze seemingly turning towards Naruto. A cruel smile touched his lips. So, the Guardian awakens. An interesting development, but ultimately, irrelevant. The image vanished. The invaders seemed to intensify their attacks, their movements becoming more aggressive. It was clear that Thanos was aware of Naruto's presence and was determined to crush any resistance. As the battle raged, a sleek, black ship descended from the sky, landing in the center of a heavily guarded area. From it emerged more heavily armored figures, carrying strange devices. They're deploying something, Angela warned, pointing towards the ship. We need to stop them. The storm clouds above seemed to gather, mirroring the turmoil on the ground. The Raven's warning had come, and the gathering storm of Thanos' ambition had reached Midgard. Naruto knew that this was more than just a local conflict. This was a battle for the fate of his world, and he, the awakened sage god, stood at the forefront of the defense. The lessons he had learned in Asgard, the echoes of longing for his home, the burgeoning power within him, all would be tested in the coming fight. Chapter 9 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.